Although today is gray and cold, raining and quite windy. So windy that it shakes our little house. It's still a perfect day. A perfect day to talk about books. The 10 books I want to read in my lifetime. About a year and a half ago, I made this exact video. And today, I'm going to present them again and update the list. That way this list is always changing. It's a living, breathing list. I'm not the biggest fan of the TBR, a to-be-read list. I don't have this giant, ever-growing, endless list of books that I check off like a grocery list. I have a bookshelf right here. Small little bookshelf with a handful of books. And when I finish a book, I never really know what I'm going to read next. Sometimes I do. When I don't, I just approach my bookshelf right here. And I just sit and look at my books. And how I decide what I read next, it's just vibes and mood. I base it off how I feel and what I'm into at that time. What's intriguing to me. Sometimes I'm in the mood for a scary book. Other times, I want a grand epic fantasy book. I don't have this weight of this massive list. However, what I do have, which might sound hypocritical, I have a list of 10 books. That's it. No more, no less. Just 10 books titled Books I Want to Read Before I Die. These are books I don't need to read right away. I'm not obligated to read them immediately and just check them off. No, I can approach them when I want. Maybe I'll read 1 or 2 a year from this list. Maybe 5. But there's no stress, and it's not a race or a competition for me. Make a cup of tea, maybe a cup of coffee. Let's settle in, because this is going to be a fun one. Book number 1, Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. I cannot believe it. I am almost 32 and I've yet to read this book. I think I live under a rock. I love reading fantasy. It's one of my favorite genres. I've read Harry Potter, Chronicles of Narnia, Wheel of Time, Name of the Wind, but I still haven't read this. So don't hate me. I'll get to this when I'm ready. Right now, I keep pushing it off because I want to be in the right headspace when I approach this. And don't get me wrong, I love the Lord of the Rings films. I watch the extended editions with my wife almost every year. Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. This was a book before the movie, and I love the movie greatly. I love Steven Spielberg, but from what I hear, this is even more horrifying and more detailed than the movie. Crichton is able to present quite complex things, like scientific concepts, but in very accessible ways for casual readers. This is also completely different from the movie. So it'll be experiencing Jurassic Park for the first time again. Dune by Frank Herbert. Another massive tome. I think that's the thing about this list of books. I've pretty much chosen all massive books, at least 800 pages each. And Dune is not a small little walk in the park. I've heard so many opinions on this book, how dry and boring it is, but also how it's a masterpiece and it's a once-in-a-lifetime read. I love the films, specifically Denis Villeneuve's Part 1 and Part 2. People that I know who have read the book, they've said that Part 1 and Part 2 of the films are pretty accurate adaptations from page to screen. But I'm also excited to see what this story is all about on the page, how ambiguous it is, how poetic it is, and interpretive it is, philosophical. I might give this a try this year. I don't know yet. Just having another massive book sitting in my hands is a little intimidating. And here is another massive tome of a book, 1,300 or so pages, The Stand by Stephen King. I've loved almost everything I've read by Stephen King. I think he's a little overrated when it comes to the horror aspect. He's not the king of horror. I'm sorry. I don't think his books are horrifying. Sorry to say this, but they're a little more adult goosebumps. And maybe because for me, I don't get scared that easily. I mean, I do with movies, but I think the only book that scared me was Misery. And this is my favorite book of his. The concept of being trapped in one room, having really no control of yourself. You're pinned to this bed. You're a prisoner. That's frightening. But when it comes to the other books, like Salem's Lot with vampires and Carrie with telekinetic powers, they're fun, exciting to read, but not scary. I think it's less about the sci-fi, horror, monster type stuff, and more about characters and their choices and where they lean on the moral compass. From what I hear, this book, The Stand, has a lot of characters and various factions and sides to this whole moral dilemma. I think the only thing that's intimidating about this book is the length. 1,300 pages. I really have to be in the right mindset to give this a try. I'm also in a little pickle here when it comes to The Stand. Because last year, I read my first book by Robert McCammon, Boy's Life. And after that, I was recommended Swan Song by Robert McCammon. This is also a post-apocalyptic book. And these two books often get compared. What's better? What's a better take on the post-apocalyptic vibe? Here I sit wondering, do I add Swan Song to the list? Or do I replace The Stand? But The Stand has been on this list for a year and a half. Why would I kick it off? I think my gut says stick with The Stand. So we'll go with that, and we'll talk in the comments. Here is yet another book by Stephen King, It. I've been pushing this off for years. I've had this book for 5-6 years now. And again, it's the length that gets me. Because I'm the type of guy that reads one book at a time. When I pick a book, I stick with it. And if I don't like it, I'll DNF it. But when I pick a book, I want to see it through. And it might take me a few months to get through. And I know it is not going to be an easy breezy kind of read for me. This is a classic. When you mention scary horror books, it is like right at the top. It's about friends fighting this evil entity. And that sounds fun. It sounds classic. And the crazy thing is it actually sounds cozy. I love when friends come together to fight evil. I have no idea when I'll get to this one, but maybe when October hits, I'll get in the mood. Now we have arrived to the books I've read from this list. I'm going to present to you each book as well as the book that takes its place, that joins the list. Dungeon Crawler Carl. I heard about this book from a friend of mine in the film industry. Told me the concept of it. I was sold on it. And then I told my wife about it. And she's fallen in love head over heels for this series. I think she's on book 6 right now. I got up to book 2. I love the concept of, aliens destroying the world, people getting thrown into a multi-layered dungeon. You got items, you've got potions, you've got skills and classes. It's very Dungeons and Dragons role-playing-esque. And it's not just outlandish fun. and violence and jokes and whatnot. There's also great emotional depth to the characters. There's a level of humanity that surprised me. And that's the main aspect I look for in a book. I don't mind reading a book that kind of, I'm able to shut my brain off and enjoy, like a little popcorn book. But if I were to continue Dungeon Crawler Carl, it would be for that level of humanity, the emotional depth that I look for in characters. And sure, I'd have fun along the way, but right now, I'm not in the mood for this. What book will then take its place? The Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe. That now joins the list of the 10 books I want to read before I die. I genuinely have no idea what this book is about. I just know the author, Gene Wolfe, has been highly praised for his very experimental approach to this story. Very layered. And it's presented in a way where Gene Wolfe wrote this as the main character. He didn't write it as Gene Wolfe. He became the character telling the story, if that makes sense. I hear it's quite confusing, deep, ambiguous, mind-bending, but I think it is a good choice to add on the list. The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. This is one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. Every word, every sentence was like a live, vivid painting. Lyrical poetry. A work of art. It's a book I cannot wait to reread again and again and again. And I'm so confused why I never see this on anyone's list. I look at booktube and all these top 10 fantasy book lists. I don't think I've once seen Last Unicorn. I always see these big series, these multiple book series, but never a fantasy standalone. You know how rare that is? This was an absolute treat, and I implore you to give this a shot. Now, what book is going to replace it? The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I think I saw someone reading this at a coffee shop once. Didn't really think much about it. Okay. Then I read True Grit by Charles Portis. And at the very beginning of that book, there's a foreword, or like an introduction by Donna Tartt. I didn't know who that name was. So, after reading True Grit and the introduction, I looked up Donna Tartt. And this book came up. And I noticed, winner of the Pulitzer Prize. That's a big deal. It's about a boy that loses his parents, navigating life. That sounds like a journey. And I want to read that. Here is yet another winner of this grand Pulitzer Prize. Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. If you don't know, I've been reading this book since last October. And right now I only have 200 pages left. I don't want this book to end. This is, again, a once-in-a-lifetime read. A profound experience. I've savored and cherished every word. I'll have my various reviews and vlogs posted on my channel about this book, especially when I finish it. This book is going to have to be replaced on this list. So what book will join the list now? And that is another classic, John Steinbeck, East of Eden. Now again, I'm kind of repetitive where I don't know too much about this book. And I think that's the best way of going into a book. You go in blind. No expectations, no hype, no spoilers, no preconceived thoughts or emotions that you think you're going to have. I want to go into a book surprised and come away from it with my own opinions and thoughts. I want my reading experience to be my own. And East of Eden sounds like a book that is very much taking biblical themes You have a family on a new rich land, and you have two sons. One is prosperous, and one is not. That sounds like poetry right there. If you've made it this far, I appreciate it. Maybe make another pot of coffee. We got about 2 more books to go through. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which was originally placed on this list. I got about 50 pages in, and I stopped. Crazy, right? What, this is less than 200 pages? That's a short book. Why stop? Why not continue? I don't know, I wasn't jiving with it. I don't think I was ready for it. I don't think I understood the humor and the messaging underneath. And that's when I dove into Dungeon Crawler Carl. That felt easy to get into. But Hitchhikers, I'll give it a try another time. However, a book is going to take its place. And what book is that? Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. In 2025, I dove into Cormac's writing with The Road and All the Pretty Horses. Right here. This is one of my favorite books of all time. Cormac's writing style is just so unique. It's so simplistic and straightforward, yet there's this underlying emptiness. Coming away from his books, you don't feel good. And you're constantly thinking about, what does this mean? What does that mean? It's very ambiguous and very philosophical in its tone and theme. I hear so much about this book. A lot of differing opinions of it. How it's a masterpiece and how visceral and violent it is. I've definitely come to love the Western genre. True Grit, All the Pretty Horses, Lonesome Dove. Why not continue with Cormac's writing style and his works? Originally, when I presented these 10 books, one of the books was a Brandon Sanderson book. Not the biggest Brandon Sanderson fan. Although I loved what he did with Wheel of Time and the last 3 books. I thought that was perfect. He emulated Robert Jordan. However, I did not like Mistborn. I thought that book was so... it was shallow, and I wanted a little more depth to it. I wanted to stay with Vin a little longer. I wanted to see her through the hardships of life before discovering her powers. I wanted things to feel earned, and nothing felt earned. It was very expositionally heavy. So, Way of Kings, which I have yet to read, I'm going to replace it. You know, when the list was made a year and a half ago, I put it on there. I'm like, okay, cool. Everyone's telling me to read it. But after a year and a half of reading all these other books, especially non-fantasy books, a lot of fiction, I've just fallen in love with other stories. I yearn for those human stories. And I don't think I'll get that in Sanderson's writing. From what I hear, they're fun. They're great. They're cinematic. It's like Marvel superheroes. Cool. But I want something a little more maybe classic. I think it makes sense to add the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy by Tad Williams. I've had this trilogy sitting on my shelf for years. I think it was after I read Name of the Wind. I did a ton of research. Who else can write like Patrick Rothfuss? Who has that similar style? I heard Robin Hobb, and then I heard Tad Williams. I think this trilogy came out in the late 80s, before Wheel of Time. So it was very classic and contemporary at the same time, where it came out before fantasy became mainstream and popular. And it's a trilogy. It's not a 7 to 10, 15 book fantasy series. I've taken such a long break from fantasy this year that I might return to that genre with Tad Williams. I know this video was a long one, and I appreciate you sticking it out with me. Sipping some coffee, sipping some tea, and just hanging out, talking books. I wanted this video to be more than just me listing books. This book, that book, this book. I want to provide context and reasoning behind my choices. Wow, it's like a Jenga tower. There it is. The 10 books I want to read before I die. Thank you for watching. And what are your 10 books? What books do you want to read in your life?